Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining the Rest is Lean podcast again. I'm John D, and I'm very happy to be joined by my colleagues and friends. It's Valentine's Day. They're my friends today. We're recording this on Valentine's Day, by the way. So we've got Russell Watkins and we've got Alan Lothian, and together we tend to talk about all things lean, change, operational excellence, the philosophy, the tools, the absolute bobbins that you can talk around these topics for your entertainment, but mainly for ours. So, if you'd like to get involved in the conversation, please drop a comment below these podcasts if you're watching on YouTube, or send us an email to therestislean@gmail.com. Well, boys, how are you? Are all both well?
Can't grumble. And if I can,
Brilliant.
you really
And I have a personal goal this episode based on the feedback you got that John, we like listening to you and the ginger fella and even the fella who falls off his chair. My personal goal this episode is to stay upright in this chair.
It was the funniest thing ever. Somebody referred to Russell as that bloke who slides off his chair during the podcast and never recognized it. But now it's all I can see. So there's something for you, viewer. Go back, check out the back catalogue and see how far he drops behind the chair.
It's feedback from me, Al.
that's it. I like the ginger bit because I always have the argument with the missus about in terms of strawberry blonde. But there you go. Because there's more grey coming in as I get older.
Yeah, I'd have you down as autumn dawn or perhaps burnt savannah.
Well, like the Dulux catalogue.
Fantastic. Okay, so thanks to everybody who has been commenting, asking questions, supplying gentle jibes to us in the comments below and emails, etc. It's really nice to see. I know people were very triggered by our conversations on what is the hardest job, and I know Russell put a poll out on LinkedIn. And what was the sort of brief upshot of that, Russ? Where did
It
people
was
land?
interesting. You could probably split it out by job role.
Hmm.
I think people voted with the job role they have experience in.
Yes.
Overwhelmingly, people admired anybody who works online or in a cell or actually making products because they have to work for 8.5 hours a day doing the same thing, knocking out quality at a high
Hmm.
skill. Uh, Team leader supervisor got a lot of love, which we also gave some love for. And people who were senior in manufacturing businesses, um, they quite rightly pointed out that people who are senior in manufacturing businesses, it's relentless. There's nowhere to hide. You're
Yeah.
expected to know the answers, and it's difficult. The fundamental. I actually fed the poll into Chat GPT to ask it to summarize it in a
Oh,
little.
really?
All right.
And it said the most appreciated jobs based on what you've uploaded are people who do difficult tasks in a manufacturing business but are underappreciated. Which kind of steers us away from CEOs and MDs because there is a natural kudos attached to that, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah. People recognize that they're doing some or must be doing something, and it's a lonely role, therefore it's about Bert. So yeah, any appreciation is literally headed directly at them
Yeah.
rather than a casual, oh, you've all done very well, which doesn't necessarily help the individual on the shop floor who thinks, thanks.
But you know, the reason I pose the question is not to get an answer because I think it's an unanswerable question.
Yeah, I agree.
The reason I posed it is because I think one of the greatest things we can do in manufacturing and probably any sector is to develop empathy for other people who are working within the
Mm,
business.
mm,
Then we start to shift away from our own biases and our own viewpoints, and we start to think, what are their difficulties? What's in it for them? How can we win together? That sounds a bit cheesy, but it's Valentine's Day.
no,
But
No,
anything that builds empathy for another's position has got to be a useful thing.
I remember the actual trigger for that conversation was us deciding from our experience, because we're in and out of businesses all the time, which of the jobs would we least like to do. So again, it's sympathy, empathy, and again, putting yourself in people's boots that triggered that whole conversation. So fascinating.
It was a great. I thought there was one particular point that stuck out for me, John, from what you said back in the episode was it's very, very difficult in real life to appreciate what goes on in other departments. And I think
Yeah,
you did mention it about if you've got the opportunity, is get out there and try and spend a day in somebody else's shoes.
yeah.
There was a program on TV, was it? Is it something with the boss or something where they basically go back to grassroots?
Mm,
Yeah,
Undercover boss, maybe something like that.
something like that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I've always tried or asked, and I've with relative success actually in the roles that I've had, when I've said, look, can I spend 2 weeks, a day, or whatever in each department, and I just want to be treated. I just want to be treated as a new employee, and just understand what's going on. You know what the
yeah,
environment's like, the amount of meetings they get drawn into, or if you're on the shop floor. I think again, you mentioned it, John, is just have a go at building the widget or whatever it is that they're actually doing, and how difficult, and let them take the mickey out of you because you can't do it.
yeah,
Yeah, and just really just try and understand and appreciate what they go through on a typical day to day. It's so powerful.
Yeah. Well, and the potential to link it to increase revenue and increase profit. So I'm forever in and out of Costa coffees because I stop there. I drive somewhere to avoid traffic early doors. So crack of dawn, I'm sat in a Costa at half 6 working for an hour and a half and then
yeah,
going into a it's it's a tough life, but I do it for you all. And you talk to any Costa coffee barista and ask them about the oven and the toasting and the cycle time. You ask them about their dishwasher and you ask them what works and what doesn't. And they've all got similar answers that would yield if somebody who was speccing the kit and buying it actually involved them, they would yield significant benefits, productivity benefits
mm,
Yeah.
for the business, insofar as they'll be there ready to make more coffees better and easier. And
yes.
it's just it's we've talked about it before, but the benefits of keeping in touch with the Gemba are you
Yeah.
just can't argue it.
So
No,
immediately
exactly.
where my mind went is the Go Gemba approach. You don't talk about it, experience it. It's
Is
the
it
only.
Well,
Goya? Is it Goya? Get off your ass.
okay. Well, but but
Yeah.
but but the problem is, and this is where there's a fellow called David Bovis who writes an awful lot about dopamine and neuroscience and the neuroscience of change. This is where it harks back to Shigeo Shingo, who worked in Toyota with Ono, etc. And he used to say, with any argument, there is a rational side and there is an emotional side.
Yeah,
Go to Gemba, the rational side is easily described. It's
yes,
easily logically explained that it's a good thing to do. The emotional side, you're asking somebody who doesn't spend all of their time there somewhere to go to a place with people who work for them and to make themselves vulnerable to appear not to know stuff.
yeah,
Now that's a big ask. We won't acknowledge it, but it's a big ask to make yourself vulnerable. It takes a certain confidence and lack of ego to open yourself up to appear to not know everything.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
Throw
Absolutely.
yourself in,
Yeah.
actually experience thing is really important.
Yeah. We're all human at the end of the day.
Yeah. Just your conversation there just triggered a memory in my head, which is funny more than educational. But I very much treat my whole job and life as how it's made live. Yeah, I just love being in factories and businesses, seeing how things are done, and wherever possible, can I have a go? And where safe and appropriate, and sometimes where not, I'll usually get the chance to have a little crack at a few things. And I've done some amazing things, including like driving a Challenger 2 tank. Not sure I ever should
Hey.
have, because I was working in the right sort of industries at the right sort of time quite a few years back. But another one that springs to mind is me doing my normal in a I'm going to say 20 years ago now, in a quite old school forge, making axles and differentials for lorries. Watching guys essentially using very large tongs to pick up glowing, enormous billets of iron. And the pivot point on the tongs is attached to a chain attached to a non-motorized monorail. So
Right.
you can grab hold of the billet, push down, and the billet will come off the ground, and then you basically slide it along on a monorail track to drop it into a drop hammer or something like that. And me being me, I got very friendly and close with the guys on the shop floor, and at some stage said, "Oh, do you think I could have a little crack at that at some stage? You know, when you're not rushed, I'd love to have a go at it, particularly so I can get a picture of me with the big glowing ingot."
And
And
they
they
and
were
they
all,
had to do the risk assessment first.
"Oh, yeah, that would be normal," but I'd already red tagged the big hole in the roof at this stage, so. Mm. And it was an earthen floor building as well. You know, it gives you a sense of how far we're going back and style. But the guys said to me, "No, you can't. You're not big enough." And yeah, fair dues. They were all big, burly blokes. You would be doing that all day. But I was a bit offended, if I'm honest, because I thought, all right, you know, I'm not as strong as you lads. I only want to do it once. I can get my selfie, you know. I just want to see what it's like. It looks amazing. Anyway, I persisted, and they said, "Go on then, have a go." So, well, I'll show them. Stronger than I look. So I grabbed hold of the billet with the tongs and pushed the handles of the tongs down and proceeded to just do a push up. He said, "You're not big enough." And basically, the billet weighed more than me. So my legs just came off the ground. At which point, they all just laughed. Two big fellas came over, grabbed me by the shoulders, and pushed me down till my legs were buckled and watched me try to move along.
John,
And when,
it does raise a really interesting question about how do you skills rotate and how do you select people for certain jobs?
yes.
You remind me. We'll come back to that in just a sec. You remind me of when years ago, about 15 years ago, but longer than that, 2003, 4, 5. I was I was leading a team to move the Rover 75 IP and the center console from Longbridge before it shut to our facility for assembly. Anyway, it turns out the fella who we 2P'd across, who was the end of line lifting the IP off when it was completed, the instrument panel, yeah, which
Mhm.
was very heavy, his nickname was Lurch, and he was absolutely hench. But he had to be hench because there wasn't the assistance then, the
Yeah.
mechanized assistance to help them lift it off.
Yeah.
And you know that we can't do that now, and we shouldn't do it because the overburden of that over time
Mhm.
is good. And that's where the Japanese are making good inroads. They are because of their demographic problem and their increasing number of nonagenarians, octogenarians, and people living longer. They are having to make work easier for pensioners.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you know there's in one of our clients currently, there's a beautiful old married couple who can't be far off retirement, possibly past, yeah. And I see them regularly when I go in. They take a good 10 minutes to get into the factory and to get home at the end because they walk very slowly. Ivor walks with a stick, and his wife walks slowly as well. Neither of them are stellar performers, but they are part of the heartbeat of that business.
Mm.
They have turned up every single day in spite of serious illness. Um, they're not the most productive of people, but they are part of the family and they stayed, they've given their lives, they're loyal, and they make a good quality product.
Mm.
As part of the um, what's the word? Evacuation procedure,
Yeah.
they now have a wheelchair by where Ivor works in case there is a fire,
Yeah.
because they value Ivor more than they value having somebody who is 100% typically able-bodied because of what he
Yeah.
brings to the business.
Yeah. And so it should be.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's where the opportunity lies, isn't it? If you think about it, we strive for perfection in everything we do. We all know that's never going to happen because the world is always changing. But when it
Mhm.
comes to people, the opportunity is always there. Is how can we make that process safer
Mm.
and easier, irrespective of people's differences?
Yeah.
Yeah, and going back to your point, what you said, Ross, in terms of there's a trade-off. There's a cost benefit that's got to be against it. Okay, but um, I just think that's the beautiful thing about it. There's always opportunity everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Here's a question for you. Oh, sorry,
Go on.
I'll carry on
No,
with
no, I
this.
was going to say, even for John's Ingot moving, I'm sure there was some sort of assistance we could have given
Oh
John.
yeah, they could have stared at me and gone, little fella. Actually, I'm more suited for the job these days than I used to be. But little fella, he's keen though. He's keen. How can we make it so that that job can be done, and it would make it better for everybody?
Mm.
And that I think is the nature of really good continuous improvement, and even harks back to why are Japanese car plants so efficient? Well, they got leveled and they started again.
Yeah.
So yeah, necessity is the mother of invention, I guess, is the easy catchphrase, isn't it? So if you've only got a very light guy in your factory or a really slow fella who's got to work in an area that needs to be evacuated really quick, but they're the right person because of their attitude or their effect on other people in the business, you'll be inventive, you'll make it work.
Yeah.
Mm. Good one.
Uh, a small aside. Am I allowed a small aside? Because I'm gonna pull us off beam again here.
Well, you're going to do a question with it.
What
I
do you
wasn't
mean off beam? You're suggesting we've got a beam.
gonna. True point.
I mean, I'm distracted by the fact my chair's squeaky at the moment. I might get some WD-40 out.
Don't fall
Um,
off.
Sponsored
in
by WD-40. Send oil, please.
Don't fall off.
in a in a future episode, I'd like to talk about why manufacturing of toys is so important in conflicts and war times. It's really interesting. Um, but my question is, where is the best operator you ever saw? Because I have an answer for this.
Ooh.
And the best operator I ever saw, it was in Nagoya. It was about 5 years ago. She was tiny. She must have been 5'2", and she was moving like it was a Tai Chi session. It was a 1.5 minute cycle. There was no wasted motion. There was no overburden. She was completely familiar with it, but engaged and alert. And it was a thing of beauty to watch. It was like watching a Tai Chi master at work because her muscle memory was so strong.
Yeah.
And yet she was doing all the stuff that we do, push, pull, test, point and check that stops us losing ourselves in blind memory. She was just flowing and it was wonderful.
Mm. What a great question.
Well,
And one that's really difficult to gut react to. One's jumped into mind for me, but I'll probably. Oh, no, no. A guy called Wolf. Cool name. I think he was Polish. I'm not sure. Um, he worked in a factory that made trailers, and the work ethic on a bloke was amazing. The strength of the guy was amazing, and he was basically throwing trailers together using his brute force. Um, but he recognized that his colleagues were unable to match his physicality. He's an enormously powerful guy, and he could throw these trailers together like throwing up a barn. And he'd do it all on his own, no problem. But nobody could actually help him. So he spent so much time chatting with everybody who would listen, team leaders, management team, random consultants who come past to say, how can we make this job much, much easier so that my friends can get involved and feel more part of this. He says they're all letting me do my thing, but I don't want to do my thing. And he wasn't lazy. He was completely the opposite. He just wanted everybody to be part of the team. And his attitude really stuck with me. It's like having a David Beckham on a football pitch who's going, I need to make everybody else better at dribbling or passing or whatever. Just, yeah,
Interesting.
great guy, great guy.
So best for me was about their personal skill. Best for you is about wanting to create the stronger team.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I buy it.
yeah. Very, very good.
I've been racking. I'm glad you let me go last because I've been racking my brains. That is a
Good
really
question, isn't it,
question.
Al?
It is. It is. It is. Um, I'm probably going to go for it's one guy called Scott. I'm not going to give his surname away because he'd get embarrassed and I still meet him. Um, and he was originally when I first met him, he's a warehouse operative. All right. Just his wife had just given birth to their first child. All right. Um, and this business we're working at was absolute bedlam. All right. Typical hockey stick moment, end of the end of the month, everything, all hands on deck. Get everything out the door as much as you can. And I'd observed this guy, and every single time there seemed to be a crisis situation, he was so methodical, he was so calm in what he did, and he never changed what he did, whether a crisis or a calm situation, he was
Mm.
just steady. And you think, well, he's not really giving it his all. But actually, he just stepped up to the plate. And going back to your earlier point there, John, and helped others.
Yeah.
All right. He just had an intuition of how to make things slightly easier. Okay. He always had a good earmark on safety. All right. He realized that we needed to make sure that we did it right first time. It's better to do that than to rush and get it wrong and worry about the fallout later. And he was always there to help each other. All right. And he'd worked there for probably the best part of 3 years, 3 to maybe 4 years. Now I then became the plant manager for that business. Um, and it was always something which actually embarrassed me, if I'm brutally honest with you, because I thought, why can't I be like that?
Yeah.
Because I'm not that person. I'm not as calm as he is under in a crisis. I gave him a chance and we promoted him into a warehouse team leader. Okay. Um, when I left the business, he then was just began as a value stream manager. Okay. And has since gone on to do great, much better things. And he was just a very, very sensible, very hardworking, really good people person. So I'm just
It's
a bloody
interesting, isn't it? Whenever we've discussed away from this podcast anything on creating change agents, I think we've all agreed you'd like to hire the personality,
absolutely, absolutely.
not the skill set, because if they got the skill set, bonus, but it's all about the right attitude. That's what's going to make it work in our world.
Mhm, mhm.
Um, uh, Alan's conversation there just triggered another thought. If, again, another person I'd chuck in there as, were they the best? Um, I did a big piece of work many years ago, and I think Alan had recognised it, for KPMG, and it was a world-class skills program.
Mhm.
I think you're the same era to have been on that, Al, or know about it.
Mhm.
And what we were doing was going into universities, polytechnics, colleges, um, right across the spectrum, and helping them to become a little bit more commercially savvy. Um, there were all sorts of pieces of training being provided to them by KPMG. I was helping with the bit which was how do they engage with businesses in the local community such that those businesses would want to send their people to the college. How do they develop their services so that people would want to engage and actually get the college to do research for them? How do you make the thing you do make money and branch out from just build it, students will come? Um, and yeah, I did a lot of training with a lot of people, and some got it, some didn't. It was definitely a bolt on
Mhm.
to what they did.
Mhm.
And there was a one lady, I won't name her, but a London-based, well-known university that was big into textiles, fashion, tailoring, all this sort of stuff. Quite an arty outfit, and very much outside of my normal skill set, it has to be said. Um, I worked with that lady, and she got it straight away, but she got it from a different angle than I did. She took it on not because of think of all the extra money we can make for the college. It was building the local community. They naturally attracted certain students, lots of foreign students, as in from abroad, coming in to learn from this high end university. Certain outfitters, I'm trying to avoid brand names because they're really obvious. Certain big brand names would send their people to them, and it was a bit of a tide thing. She saw this whole idea as a way of building a community around their college because actually the buildings were in an area that was quite deprived. And she wanted to take this idea out to the little back streets and alleys around the university and talk to people who got a little shop making tie-dyed hippie outfits and stuff like that, and go and speak to them about how they could help each other with opportunities. And I worked with her for quite a while. And I feel like what I gave her was just a little tiny spark, and I learned so much. She was bringing people in to learn how to do something particularly technical. But then the college was riding off the back of this really small outfit and sending their photography students to go and photograph this little boutique and people wearing the outfits and cross-pollinate with, this is new techniques picked up from XYZ university. Um, it was a symbiotic piece of perfection this lady had taken. I'm saying, go out there and earn money, be commercially aware, to, yeah, that's all right. I'm going to build a community and we'll all make money. It was fabulous.
You jump on another subject, topic there, John, is a lot of that's about sharing best practice. So you find
Yeah,
the
yeah,
right person who are willing to share.
yeah,
Okay. You think how many businesses we go into and how much knowledge and experience is in even just a typical SME,
yeah.
right? We're not talking big multinationals here. Okay. There's untapped knowledge and skills in everybody. All right. There are so many good things that happen on a day by day basis in every single business, but we find it incredibly difficult in sharing that knowledge. And that might help another individual on another shift. It might help another department. Yeah. It might help another plant within the same group.
Mm,
Yeah. Just to know what either A, set an example of what the current good looks like. Um, a particular problem that's been solved, which actually the countermeasure could actually be applied or something very similar on another similar problem elsewhere, but we don't share it because generally everything's going at such pace. We don't take our step back. We don't congratulate enough when we solve things, and then we don't share that knowledge, share the love. Again,
mm,
another understanding. We don't share the love with other people, other departments, other plants as effectively as we could do.
yeah.
Well, some
Yeah.
some companies formalize that, Al. So the Japanese word for that is yokoten,
Mm-hmm.
to bridge across and share knowledge. Um, if you look at the Toyota approach, it's a formal part of the group leader's job is to yokoten, and it is an expectation and a formalized part of the group leader role to look at the team leaders who work for them and to identify where a countermeasure or an approach here could work elsewhere. It's it's superb. And if you're smart, you find a mechanism for that either through SharePoint or through Microsoft Teams or through some kind of shared drive and Kaizen sheets before and after. It is so easy now to share Kaizen and improvements
Mm,
globally that it's hard to imagine why people don't do it beyond uh, I'm keeping my stuff close to me and my business because I don't trust the parent, or I don't want to make myself less competitive against
yeah,
another plant that is in the same group.
yeah.
Do you think that's a British thing? Do you think, Russ?
No, I
No.
think it's a corporate dueling metrics. How do we want our different plants to compete internally? Do we want to compare them on league tables? And if we do, that's going to drive a certain behavior.
Yeah.
Do we want them to be entrepreneurial and give them P&L and balance sheet and some MPI autonomy? And therefore we leave them to it, which grows a different type of independence that isn't particularly given to sharing. So, I think it's fundamentally just difficult to get human beings to create the right metric and cultural environment where you could say, hey, we've done this and you could benefit from that as well.
Yeah, yeah. It's really interesting that we could start a new whole debate if I'm not careful on we're back to the silos again. The
But,
effect
but,
of
but, but fundamentally,
corporate
John,
thinking on how it stops people wanting to share. What why haven't we got the same as they've got next door? Because they won't tell us how they did it. Why won't they tell you how we did it with the same company? Ah, yeah, but they're the winning of our two companies, and that's really important to them. And they don't want us to overtake because then we'd be the one losing somebody next year.
But there are simple things you can do to try to break through this fog. And one is that thing about creating body plants. So let's say you work in a manufacturing group that has 20 locations around the world. The Simplistically, the 10 strongest will then pair up with the 10 who want and need the most help, and you create a
Yeah,
buddy system. And within that buddy system, you have an exemplar effectively. Within that buddy system, you have window people. So you introduce the quality manager as the quality manager, you introduce
yeah.
the ops manager, and those window people start a dialogue. And so you start these flowing of information to create the conduit for Yokoten to flow.
Mm, I quite
interesting,
like
Russ. How
that.
do you define in those examples, and how are the businesses defining who the exemplar is? Because you can, I mean, I've worked with some, should we say, larger organisations, but the MD or the plant manager of that factory doesn't want to be tarnished with the brush, or we're the weak link, so to
Well,
speak, and therefore we're
it,
getting the help. So there's a bit of, should we say, there can be a little bit of animosity sometimes.
you wouldn't couch it in those terms that I put it in, Al. You would. So if you look at the Toyota Denso example that I've lived, typically it is the Japan plants will have an overseas group company, a mother plant each, because it is generally acknowledged that the Japanese plants on the Japanese mainland will be a bit better.
There's an informal understanding in agreements, so to
However,
speak. Yeah. Okay.
however,
Yeah,
it's two underpinning things about lean are really interesting to me at the moment. One is flow and one is pull versus push. The reason I love the Six Nations rugby, and I'll come back on Beam in a minute, is because in most elite and non-elite team sports, the referee's job is punitive, or the umpire's job is punitive. They are there to blow up if there's a problem. Yeah.
yeah,
Rugby union is one of the few where the referee will actively keep flow going by saying, we formed them all. No, stay there. Stay away from the nine. Leave it, and he will actively let the game flow. So I'm thinking about flow a lot in many circumstances. But in relation to this question, Al, I come to pull versus push. I don't think you push a mother plant. I think you create the environment for pull and say, we want to deepen bonds with
mm,
the group. Who would you like to get to know?
Yeah. And who are the factories that are willing to say we want to learn more from others?
And
Yeah.
and because even if a factory that is not performing as strongly buddies up with another one that isn't much better, they will still learn from each other. There will still be a collaboration benefit as long as you haven't got two management teams who are in a negative spiral and just drag each other down.
I'll give you a kind of very quickly one experience of mine. So I won't name the company. People be able to work out. But
Name them, Al, name them. No, don't.
no, well, we used to
Like,
have an incentive whereby we would share best practices throughout the globe. All right, throughout the
yeah,
position. Right. So every year, each site would be were able to volunteer. Basically, they were voluntold. Problem number one. Okay, to offer their best Kaizen in each of their respective factories and present it to a board. Okay. And then it would be shortlisted, and then there would be an award for the best Kaizen. What do you think really, what eventually happened is because it was expected, okay, dare I say it, certain ones were being not fabricated, should we say embellished is probably the right word. Okay. Um, there was a common theme that there was one particular plant that always ended up, if not winning it, in the top two for about 5 years straight. Now, you and I can say, actually, that's a very, they're obviously an exemplar plant and they do incredibly well. All right. But what you can then say is actually, well, you're asking me to put this forward, but at the end of the day, is it really worth it? Because such and such is just going to win it.
Because they're
So it's
really good at PowerPoint.
exactly. So yeah. So what turns out to be an incentive actually becomes a disincentive if you don't manage it effectively. And it really comes back to what you said before there, Russ. It's got to be a pull. There's got to be a need. There's got to be a trust in why you're doing it. Yeah. Not a push where, oh, you can volunteer. No, well, really, no, you've got to send something. Well, that's push.
Hmm. I think did the idea of pull philosophically
Yeah.
like that, Russ,
There's
is
got to be a
really,
need and
really
a willingness.
interesting.
Yeah.
I
Um,
spend a lot of time thinking about how do we get pull in any
yeah.
different.
Yeah, it's turning something that might be seen as punitive into something that's entirely positive. And a lot of the time, measuring people is punitive. Why are you measuring this? Because the quality's bad. Um, and hearing you speak about that idea of how do we not say you're a really good plant? Yeah. Here's one of the junior plants. Oh, go look after one.
Mhm.
But instead, turning that into junior plant, use better phrase, you have the option of learning from any of the senior or doing well plants this year. What is it that you would like to get better to do?
Mhm.
What would you like to be better at? And therefore, which plant would you like to be partnered with or something
Yeah.
like that? I see that as a very interesting, very positive way of breaking out of the silos that are created by your typical big multi-site business because I really struggle with the benefits of some of these
Yeah. So can I
big
pick? Can I just pick
multi-site.
quickly on that point, John?
Yeah,
So what we did to swap it round is exactly what you've said. There is within those factories, all right, and within the performance reviews, say the site manager or plant manager, for
yeah.
example, we were asked as part of their development. We asked that actual question. You
Mm,
know, who do you compare yourself against within the group? Who do you consider is your
yeah.
parity? Is someone you think you're better at, or you think you perform at a higher level
Mm,
than or less than? Who would you like to learn from? All right.
mm,
Because as part of that, so flip it on its head as it's a personal development for
mm,
the greater good of the business. You then very quickly sense whether they believe they've got either A, they've got a chip in the shoulder and they think they're the best things in sliced bread and they don't feel they need to learn for everyone, not the right approach. Or it's the ones who then say, oh, well, I'd love to go over to China and go to the Shenzhen plant because, or I'd like to go to Pune in India because some of the things I've seen on the internet have been
mm,
absolutely fantastic. I'd love to learn more and go
mm,
do that. It might just be a step within the US or within the UK. Yeah.
mm.
And the business should encourage that and allow those people or a select few to go and learn because that tells you two things. They want to learn, they want to learn within the group, and they're the sort of people that you want rather than forcing the issue. Okay. And secondly, it takes away you pushing them on another plant.
Yeah.
As as
Yeah.
long as and I'm going to take this all the way back to Mixan,
Yeah.
Toshiyuki Murakawa, as long as they go with the question. So the whole reason Industry Forum was set up and us three met was because they got the British government got fed up of spending money sending trade missions to Japan to ooh and ah their way around Japanese plants and enjoy a bit of sushi, enjoy the hot spring, have a bit of karaoke, come home. That was great. business as usual now.
Yeah.
They wanted to create a pull. Um, and so I interviewed Mick Sam years ago for a magazine, having been savaged by him for a year and a half. I then interviewed him for a magazine, and he did his usual thing of dropping some gems in. And the one he said was learning starts with a question. He said most Western engineers, they'll just look at a line and they'll be talking and bunnying.
Mm.
And he said that annoyed me so much. That was one of my biggest annoyances of training UK engineers, was that they just watch a line and talk. And he said, what I want you to do is shut up, look at the line and have a question in your mind. Why are you stood there observing these people, which by the way is an act of you have to be very careful to be respectful on it.
Yeah.
Why are you observing this line? You will only learn something if you've gone to learn, and that starts with I have a question.
Yeah.
So any the people I've taken over to Japan for clients previously, it has always started with an assessment of what do you want to know, what gap are you looking to
Correct.
fill.
Correct. So
And
there's substance to the reason why you want to go there, not
yes,
because I've got an uncle who lives or a family member who lives in the same state, so I can pop and go and see them. So
yeah.
to speak. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and it doesn't have to be SQDC. It can be I want to go and see how the materials manager runs their area,
Yeah,
because
Yeah.
I think I can learn from that. So it
yeah,
can be anything, as long as there is a question that is a benefit to that person, their capability, and the business.
yeah. And there's a win-win there for everybody. It's a really great way of linking pull, personal development, and it benefits the business. It just ticks
Yeah.
all the boxes. The additional thing, the thing I was talking about, because I was the same there, Russ, was I can still I was picturing myself then when you were explaining it, being on a line at Allied Steel and Wire, I think it was. The reinforced steel
Yeah.
cables
Rebar
hurtling
type
down
stuff.
at the rate of knots. My
Yeah.
word, God. And I remember stood on the line and I was watching, and he asked me that very, very question. But before then, he literally got me and smacked me on the side of the head, and he got my ear defenders, because literally someone had asked me a question. I'd moved them to one side, and he just came over and gave me an almighty swipe. All right, and you and I, height difference between me and Mick.
Yeah.
He was on stilts trying to do it, right? And he said, "You got two of them, one of them for a reason, right? Why are you here?" And that was one of those epiphany moments when it wasn't until like months afterwards and the conversation with Mammy Sam where you get it.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's not just, I know you say observing. For me, it was more how I read into it. It was more about forget this, use all the other senses, the
Mm.
listening that we've talked about in the past. Yeah.
Smell.
Obviously, your eyes, the smell, the touch. You can just sense things.
Well, in
Yeah.
in 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 that same interview, he told that story. So he was talking about in I think it's in kanji, in Japanese characters, the word for, I can't be sure on this, the word for ears is twice the volume, twice the number of strokes as for mouth, and that's
Right.
for the reason that you've elaborated.
Right. Okay.
And he said there is a story of the wisest man in the land is not the one who says the silkiest things. It's the one who can sit in a crowd and listen to 10 conversations at once and follow them,
Mm. Mm.
which I try and do in Costa now, but I can't very well.
I miss being around Agile Masters. Not the being slapped around the back of the neck thing and humiliated on a ritual basis, but yeah, the gems and the little light bulb moments that we had were fabulous.
Well, you
I'm
did.
loving this conversation though. I really am, guys. This again, this idea of pull, this idea of questioning. People who know and have worked with me will know that I've got no shame whatsoever in spending an entire day, if necessary, just exploring. Tell me again, what is the exam question? We got this reasonably fundamental thing to do, and you may have articulated as solve the problem.
Mhm, mhm,
Yeah, yeah. I've got no shame in saying let's discuss what the exam question is.
mhm.
Let's
Problem
really go
framing.
for, and we will spend a day. Um, and that again is I'm linking this back to this idea, which I'm really liking, your ideas about buddying up across corporate entities. I'm really liking that. I'm taking that away and saying, oh, I do a thing with 5S and I do a thing with the exam question where I will always before we begin 5S and before we begin anything else that's got an exam question. So let's just devise your measurable that we will use to say we won. You
Yeah.
know, what's the unit of measure? If it's a tick in a box, it's a tick in a box. But is it, a degree of improvement in pace or temperature or whatever? How will we know it's better?
Yeah.
I was just thinking, if you ask the site A, who do you want to learn from? I want to learn from India. Why? Oh, we want to learn how they do standard ops because their standard ops are really good and we really like to get good at it. So we'd like to partner up with them. Fabulous. Let's discuss that question some more. What do you actually want? And round it off with you, site A, are going to partner up with India, assuming they say yes.
We
You,
don't want them.
you decide the measure of success. You come up with the unit because again, a corporate entity will very often say, right, everybody's got to get their productivity, whatever that means, up by 10%. So we all go out to do it. And it drives some incorrect actions and it is resented. And it will also result in managers going, we're not going to get the 10%. What have the other sites got? Oh, they've got 7. They've got 6. We haven't got to get 10%, boys. All we got to do is we got to get 8.
Yeah.
And that'll make us the winners. And
You've
it
not got
drives
the
all that
fastest
sort of
exam, Havana.
nonsense.
Yeah, go on.
But if you've been asked who do you want to partner with and how are you going to measure success, and it's not we will have seen standard ops, it's something tangible. You know what you want. You've understood your own question, I hope. You know why you want to learn from standard ops. What will change?
And by the way, it's the end of the episode, isn't it?
Yes, I
So it
was
was.
just about to say we've been rambling for quite some time, guys.
I've
So
slowed
we'll
down a
get to
bit.
wrapping it
He's
up.
fallen off his chair now.
50 minutes. We can tell how far through the episode we are, like a bar chart. Russell is visually representing it. Subscribers who stick with our little ramblings will start to recognize some standard spots. And we have our top tips popping up now and again. Another regular feature we're introducing is about looking at some of the Japanese phrases that are used. And we're going to go over to Russell for a little bit of Japanese. Russ, have you got a word to share with us?
Well, can I give a bit of a backstory to it,
Please.
and then go for the word? So it was started with our discussion with 5S, and I'd remembered that I was once training a team in 5S and asking them what the 5S's were in English because people speak English
Yes.
in the Midlands. And this one woman, she was contorting her face. She was trying to remember something, and then she blurts out, "Shitty." Now, she didn't mean shitty. She meant shitsuki because previously she'd been trained in the Japanese S's for 5S,
Yes.
for which I can't see a purpose, actually. I see no point to that. But it got me thinking about Japanese words and the long-running debate in Lean about are they a good thing? Are they a bad thing? Should we be adopting them? Should we not? And I'm agnostic on this. I think you adopt something where the original word tells you something that isn't easily translated. So I have 10 words, and I thought perhaps we could explore them one by one and the overall thought of should we be using Japanese words? And my first word will be atarimai.
Tadimare. Am I pronouncing that
Atarimai.
correctly?
Close, atarimai. And basically it is we can either have rules in the factory or we can have a tarimai. And people will follow rules because they fear being penalized if they don't. They do it while somebody's watching. But if we can get it to a tarimai and they do it as naturally as breathing because they believe in the rule, you get into a useful place.
So would we say a rule is something that needs enforcing? A tadimare,
A
insert
tarimai,
word,
Paramare.
tadimare is a rule that we all live by because it helps us.
it isn't a rule. We do it because we see the benefit and because because we see the benefit, it's a
It's a
natural.
value and belief then, is it?
Yeah,
Like a value.
it becomes a belief, and I've seen it go too far, and I've seen it done well. A simple example is the classic one. Japanese fans, after a major sporting event overseas, will clean the stadium.
Mhm.
And it's because they believe it's a good thing to do for social cohesion, for WA, for the community spirit. I created the mess and we will clear it up and we will leave this place as respectfully as we found it.
That was actually shown on the last Football World Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah,
They
yeah,
showed it. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Everyone just all the Japanese just stayed behind and cleaned the stadium. Yeah. Mhm.
So anyway, maybe we can explore that a bit deeper next time,
Yes.
and then if we pick one each time, and maybe we'll come to a conclusion about should we be using Japanese words in lean or should we not? Because I'm torn.
Let's
I'm not.
discuss next time. Excellent. Thank you very much.
Okay, guys. So we've come to I think a natural finish for today. So it's a big goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from me.
And a goodbye from him.
And don't forget, if you haven't done so already, don't forget to subscribe. And we look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The Rest is Lean. See you now.
Thank you very much.
See ya.